We are very honored today to welcome Governor Jared Polis to Northern Colorado. Sir, thank you for joining us. As we've heard this morning, public policy matters, and that's what our conversation is about today. As we know, Northern Colorado is a special place, as our congressman already knows this. Northern Colorado is comprised of educators and artists, inventors and caregivers. We are high-tech and high-touch. We are innovative and pioneering. We are rugged and independent. We are vast, and we continue to grow. Our legacy industries are ingrained in our culture, in our ethos. Our innovative economy is an integral part of what happens now and in our future. We honor our legacy industries, those who've paved the way, and we encourage new ideas. We can honor both without harming either. We are a region of dichotomies, and we embrace those differences as our strength. We collaborate to work towards common goals to keep our economy vibrant and our communities happy and healthy. Governor, as Northern Colorado goes, so goes Colorado. Recently passed and looming policies and regulatory decisions threaten our special place. These decisions also put at stake the economic rewards to the state coffers that come from our diverse and balanced economy in Northern Colorado. We know the statistics. Northern Colorado's Weld County is Colorado's leading producer of cattle, grain, and sugar beets, and it's the richest agricultural county in the United States east of the Rocky Mountains, and the fourth overall richest nationally. Oil and gas production contribute $13.5 billion to the state GDP and $1 billion in state and local taxes. Public policy does indeed matter. So again, we are very, very honored and pleased to have Governor Jared Polis. He is an entrepreneur, an education leader, and a public servant. After launching several successful companies, Governor Polis committed himself to making sure other Coloradoans had the opportunity to pursue their dreams through founding schools for at-risk and new immigrants and starting nonprofits to help veterans. Prior to serving as governor, Governor Polis served on the State Board of Education and represented Colorado's 2nd Congressional District. Sir, we are honored and grateful to have you here today. Please help me in joining to welcome Governor Polis to the stage.
Well, I want to thank the Northern Colorado Legislative Alliance for holding the summit. It's always great to be home in Northern Colorado. I want to thank the attendees, the panelists, really everybody who will make this a successful event. We, just a few weeks ago, had a wonderful listening session in Greeley, about 100 residents, some of whom are here. Really the biggest takeaway, no surprise from Northern Colorado, was the word collaboration, and how so many people really work together to meet health needs, to create an innovative future, to make sure our kids are learning in schools. There's just so many examples of that form of collaboration. As in one is the collaboration between Ames and UNC. So this is the first of its type in the state. We're looking to model this in other communities like Pueblo, where students who are admitted to Ames are able to get their UNC ID, able to be part of the UNC data system for students, even able to live on UNC campus, have a seamless transition if they choose to go on for a 4-year degree, along with, of course, an even more closely aligned course of study with transferability to allow students a truly seamless route to a 4-year degree from a 2-year degree at a lower cost and quicker, or, of course, simply completing their 2-year degree. Another great collaboration, since we're talking about Ames, is between Ames and the Greeley-Weld 6 School District. Ames has an early college high school located on campus where students are able to graduate with an associate's degree concurrent with their high school diploma at no cost to them. Ames Early College High School is predominantly first-generation college goers, majority minority. and allows students to be able to enter the workforce with a skill that allows them to support themselves. If they do choose to go into a four-year like CSU or UNC, they likely only need 2 years or at most 3 to complete that four-year degree. These are kinds of models that we talk about across the state, but they're really wrought through the hard work of collaboration. As governor, of course, we try to replicate and expand what works, and we love Northern Colorado examples that can work elsewhere, ways that we can better ensure that our economy keeps growing, to save families and small businesses money, and of course to make sure that everybody, no matter where they live or their economic background, has the opportunity to succeed in our great state. That always starts with education. In an increasingly complex 21st century economy, and education is more important than ever before to succeed. That doesn't always mean a degree at CSU or UNC, but it means some skills beyond just a high school diploma. It might mean technical certification, might mean an associate's degree, an apprenticeship with real work skills while you're in high school. How can we make sure that students are able to get a good job, and not just the economy of today and the economy of tomorrow? Strong education starts early, which is why we put our focus on getting a bipartisan bill passed to make sure that every child in Colorado can go to free full-day kindergarten, which started this fall, which makes an enormous difference, not just in Northern Colorado, but across the state. Not just a difference for the kids, which is, of course, why I'm doing the work I do. Studies show that early childhood education and quality preschool and kindergarten make a persisting positive difference across the entire educational and post-educational life of children. Lower grade repetition rates, lower special education rates, saving the state and the school districts money over time, and of course increased earning potential after graduation. Not only is it important to prevent those learning gaps that persist along economic and racial lines from occurring in the first place with quality early childhood education, but it's also important for families. It might free up a second parent to return to the workforce sooner if their kid has the ability to go to full-day preschool instead of half-day preschool. And that's important in this tight labor economy too. When I hear from so many employers that finding the folks that need to fill positions is one of their biggest challenges. We continue our work on expanding preschool opportunities for kids. Last year, we freed up about 5,100 preschool slots, e-care slots, by funding full-day kindergarten in the budget that we submitted this year. We are looking to fund an additional 6,000 preschool slots for low-income families. Again, the added benefit of making sure that their kids enter kindergarten ready to learn from a social-emotional perspective, from an academic perspective, and of course, making sure that those parents have the opportunity, if they choose, to re-enter the workforce sooner, and of course, saving families money. A big cost to everybody is healthcare. I ran several businesses and nonprofits and knew that healthcare line and providing benefits to our employees. If you see it from the employer side, you know the cost. If you see it from the employee side or the individual side, you see the cost because you see it coming out of your paycheck. We are taking good ideas from the left, the right, the center, from far off space, anything we can do to save people money on healthcare. We had a number of bipartisan bills that we were able to get through last session, including the reinsurance bill, which reduces insurance rates in the individual market by 20.2% in this current open enrollment period. That's the average statewide. A little bit more in Weld County, a little bit less in Larimer County. In Weld County, the average was 23.9% reduction, which is real savings to families of $460 a month. And so remember, these are people who don't get it from work, who buy it on their own. We care about everybody from individual to small group to large group. In a moment, you'll hear about some of the next phase of ideas to reduce costs for small group and large group as well as individuals. But the initial target of the reinsurance efforts and the shortest term savings are for individuals who buy their own insurance. That often means they're self-employed, consultants, maybe retired a few years before Medicare kicks in, work several jobs. You might say participate in the gig economy is the buzzword. So folks, about 7-8% of Coloradans who don't get it from Coloradans and buy it on their own will recognize significant savings by shopping around in the exchange this year, right now, during this open enrollment period. We also looked at systemic cost drivers, including passing hospital transparency efforts, which build on the recent Trump administration's hospital transparency efforts that were signed just the other day. We're created a pathway for lower cost imported prescription drugs from Canada, which we are now working on negotiating to save money on prescription drugs. Remember, so looking at the total healthcare costs, providers, hospitals, that's about 40%. Prescription drugs are about 20%. So two very big cost drivers of that overall cost picture for healthcare, which is about 18% of our economy. And at that 20,000 foot level, this is what is broken and doesn't work in America and Colorado. 18% of our costs are healthcare, and most other Western industrialized nations are closer to 8, 9, 10%. Now, that would be wonderful if we had better outcomes. We don't. Our lifespan is in the middle of the pack. On most health indicators, we're in the middle of the pack. We simply pay more for the same or for less because of moral hazards and lack of functioning markets and all the problems that you and I know exist in healthcare in our state and in our country. We can't fix them all in a state. But as the laboratories of democracy, the states absolutely can innovate. And Colorado can go from one of the higher cost states to one of the lower cost states for businesses, for individuals, and that is very much what we hope to accomplish in our administration, including through the topic of the next presentation, which will be the proposed public option, which was a bipartisan bill that passed the legislature last year. A public option can mean many things, and it might disappoint some on the left that this version of the public option is not any kind of government-run insurance company or anything like that. It's simply providing additional competition through the current insurers. Currently in 22 of our 64 counties, there's one choice in the individual and small group market for insurance. That's not a functional market. We also need to provide a way where the segmented carrier market and insurance market has more leverage to negotiate better rates with providers. So you'll hear a lot about that from Kim Bimsteffer, former corporate executive, who has really put pen to paper on what we hope is a model for the country in terms of driving down costs. Individual, small groups, so this is employers up to 100, but there's a lot in it for employers over 100 too, because ultimately it'll increase their carriers or their self-insured pool negotiating leverage as well to get some of those better negotiated rates with providers. That's sort of one of the many dysfunctions in the healthcare system, is those who are supposed to be negotiating for better rates, namely the carriers, are so segmented that they lack that negotiating authority, particularly in markets in our state where there's a monopoly, oligopoly with regard to providers. So that's something that systemically, again, can't fix all of it. Change comes slowly, but constructive step to drive the efficiency and changes we need to reduce costs further for individuals, for small group, and for large group employers will all come out of this effort around the Colorado public option. Also want to give you updates on some local projects here in northern Colorado, including on housing. In Weld County, we recently invested $2 million of community development block grant funding in Mission Village in Evans, 68 family units, $1.1 million in Mission Homestead in Evans. That's through Habitat for Humanity. In Larimer, recently from the state marijuana tax cash fund, we invested $1.35 million in Mason Place, 60 units, supportive housing and multifamily rental development for veterans and others who are at risk of homelessness. Also in Larimer, $600,000 for Mirasol Apartments. And so we continue to really look at how we can, with the limited state resources we have, target them to help meet real-life needs in our communities, obviously affordable housing being a significant one for the continued prosperity of northern Colorado. Where will the workers live? We know if people live further away, we have to build more roads. That's also costly. How can we help people live closer to where they work, reduce traffic, and find an affordable way that companies and communities can find the folks they need to power them. And while we're on these topics, I also want to talk about our efforts to reduce taxes for small businesses and for everybody. Earlier this year, we gave a significant tax cut to every retail business in the state, 144,000 retailers. That's every retailer that's up to $12 million in sales. So not necessarily the big box retailers, This is every Main Street retailer. I mean, for those of you in retail, I mean, even if you have a few stores, 12 million is a pretty good number. You know, a retail store might do 1 million or 2 million. That's reasonably successful. So that's up to small chains, I guess you could say. And we cut the vendor fee for them, meaning essentially that they no longer have to remit as much of the sales tax they collect to the state. So they're able to keep 0.07% of it back, which is very significant in terms of their total tax collections, and that goes right to either their bottom line or in a competitive market. Of course, they can pass it along in the form of reduced consumer prices, hopefully somewhat offsetting the effect of the tariffs and the trade wars, which is an upward pressure on consumer product pricing. I also want to talk a bit about transportation. You all got here, so I'm sure it's all on your minds. I-25 expansion. Recently, Colorado Transportation Commission awarded the 25 expansion project an additional $250 million to move to the alignment with expanded bridges at 34 and Kechter. I toured some of that area recently. Meanwhile, we also put together state, local, and federal funding for the next section, which goes from Meade up to 402 in Johnstown. So, you know, thinking back to 2015 or 16, when a lot of the 25 North project was just getting underway and discussion was beginning, you know, it's really amazing how we've been able to, thanks to not just the state, but so many communities, towns, cities, counties, that have really stepped up to own this and make it happen. Thanks to the local partners, the federal partners, the state legislature, we are now going to see an additional lane on Highway 25 about a decade sooner than we expected in some of those initial conversations that we had in 2015 and 16. I was wearing a different hat at that time as the representative from the area, but was very much engaged on particularly the federal side with regard to that project. And we're really well positioned to add a third free lane to the entire corridor from a spacing perspective when that need arises and when the funds are available. So we're well situated for future success. In Weld County, we're also doing $2 million for repairs on Weld County roads 53 and 58, $9 million to upgrade Weld County Road 49 to a 4-lane highway, $4 million for Weld County Road 29, that's the one that connects Highway 14 to County Road 100, and $1 million for 37th Street in Evans, and $1 million for State Highway 263 in Greeley, which links State Highway 85 with the Weld County Parkway. In Larimer, we're doing $3 million to replace the bridge at Namaqua Park in Loveland, increasing the width and also designing it to withstand future flood events, hopefully, knock on wood. We all remember the last one. $6 million in river restoration and ditch improvements along that same corridor. Northern Colorado is also going to be home to the very first center load Bustang stops. CDOT has been working hard to expand Bustang service to, of course, Estes Park, but also the broader community as a way of relieving traffic and improving tourism access to those areas. New stations at Kendall Park near Loveland and at Colorado 56 in Berth that allow passengers to load onto Bustang from the middle of I-25. So if you've seen construction occurring, it's right from the middle, which again improves travel times for riders, decreases disruption to the buses, and also from the buses for free-flowing traffic in the other lanes. So on a broader scale, in our current budget we have submitted to the legislature, we're requesting $625 million for transportation in our budget. It's a strong budget year. We're able to find additional savings to redeploy to transportations, savings from a lower interest rates on certificates of participation, and savings from within CDOT that we're able to push out the door to actually spend on roads and bridges. We also know that we need to figure out the long-term funding for transportation. Voters have rejected 3 different measures in the last 2 years on funding transportation. They rejected 109, 110, and CC, if I have my letters and numbers right. It always gets confusing. But basically, they rejected bonding with no new revenue, which is they rejected bonding with a sales tax increment, and they respected using a third of the surplus for transportation. So, you know, it's always wonderful to know what the voters don't want to do. That's very helpful, but we also have to figure out what it is they want to do. Obviously, transportation and roads is one of the top items that we hear about. We do the most with what we have every day, but if there's anything in terms of the medium and long-term transportation infrastructure needs of the state, there needs to be some bonding and capital mechanism. The operating is simply too erratic. Yes, $625 million, if we could sustain that every year, that would be wonderful. But the way it works is when we are in a downturn or recession, that number is just devastated. There's close to zero general fund money for transportation because it's all obligated by the needs of the other needs of the state. And so that transportation piece is not as predictable as some of the others. A bonding mechanism traditionally used for capital would be the appropriate way to make infrastructure, road and bridge investments depreciated over the period of time of the usefulness of those investments. So we look forward to continuing that discussion with Republicans, with Democrats, with Northern Colorado communities to find the way forward for better capital mechanisms rather than just trying to fund transportation on an operating basis, which again, no complaints about it this year, works in the short term, but that's not a long-term strategy and will essentially zero out infrastructure expenditures during the next recession. We know that Colorado, and especially Northern Colorado, is an amazing place to live, to work, to do business, to start a company, to grow a company, to raise a family, to retire. We have an amazing quality of life, and our goal is to make that even better by reducing costs, whether that means saving young families money on early childhood education, families money on health care, reducing time stuck in traffic, increasing economic opportunity. All of those great, protecting our wild areas and parks. We also are included in our budget, increasing capacity, our state park system. If you've tried to visit some of our popular state parks, you've probably noted that they're booked many months in advance and it's hard to get into. We are not only planning on opening up a new state park in Trinidad, which I realize is a little far from Northern Colorado, but it's going to be worth checking out. It's Fisher's Peak, which is that huge mesa that looms above Trinidad, should be open by the end of next year. But also simple increasing camping grounds, parking spots, restrooms at our other existing parts of our state park system to increase availability for our residents, as well as celebrate, of course, the role of our state parks as economic drivers in the area that they are present. So again, thank you for inviting me to speak here today. I know you all look forward to hearing about the work on the public option, the next step to reduce healthcare costs here in Colorado, especially for companies under 100, but also for individuals and for large group employers. We simply have to do more to reduce costs, to be competitive, and turn healthcare costs in Colorado from a liability, we're above the national average, to a point of competitive pride that actually helps businesses and individuals live here and thrive, because we hope to be below the national average in healthcare costs over the next few years. So thank you for inviting me to speak here today, and I look forward to working with all of you to move our state boldly forward. Thank you.